Hello. Found it really interesting this morning actually, and I'm going to slightly change some of the things I was going to say as a result of it, so damn you all, you earlier speakers. Thought I was heading in the right direction. No, I'm not. My name's Tony Ellender. I'm the Emerging Talent Manager for Balfour Beatty. You've all heard of Balfour Beatty, and I cringed at the earlier talks about profit warnings and things. We won't even go there. Anyone that's been on the M25, apologies, because we run it. And just on roads, I'm based in Manchester. So I drove down here this morning, and as I was sitting in the roadworks, as we all do, luckily not ours, I looked out at all the chaps, all the white chaps in their diggers, and thought no wonder we have a problem with recruiting, because it's sunny today, but normally it's a bit muddy and rainy and horrible. And I think I counted a mile between the two chemical toilets at the side of the road. I thought no wonder we have a problem recruiting people, because we can go on all we want about nice offices and things and being a quantity surveyor, because that doesn't involve going on site. But the reality is 80% of our people are at the side of the road using a chemical toilet. Anyway, that isn't what I was going to talk about. That was just a reflection. Okay, industry response. So, as Bridget mentioned earlier, and the CIOB have been incredibly supportive in what we've been doing in the Trailblazer Consortium, but as have 4 other professional institutions as well, but Bridget won't want me to mention them quite rightly. So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about is this idea of an industry response to what we see as a skills issue. We're all agreed there's a skills issue at all levels. And lots and lots of companies, large and small, do lots and lots about it. And we've got a training board that's been trying to do something about it for 50 years. And we're one of the 1% of companies that will be paying 2 levies. So we look forward to that. So what I've done is I'm going to tell you a little bit about an industry response to an issue. And then how it's gone, and sort of give you a little bit of an update here. So, first of all, the first line here is really, really important. When it comes to education, an industry needs to tell education actually what we need, don't we? And we're not very good at that. In fact, we're really, really bad at it. That's why what's taught in colleges and universities doesn't always match the workplace. Partly because it's changing so quickly, partly because people in the colleges and universities haven't been in the workplace for a little while, but equally we don't bring them in the workplace to help them to understand it. And also partly because if you get Balfour Beatty together, Carillion together, Costain together, and Laing O'Rourke together and trying to get them to agree on what makes a good site manager, then you've got a problem as well, haven't you? Before you even then start going into Tier 2 and Tier 3. So industry needs to tell education what it needs, but we need to agree first. It's really interesting that Bridget focused on the sort of what Laing O'Rourke called the cadet scheme, what we call trainees, but actually lots and lots of companies in construction, large and small, have been doing this part-time education for years, haven't we? You know, PwC and KPMG think these school leaver programs are something new. We've been doing them for at least 30 years, and I'm sure lots of other companies here have been as well. But what we have is actually parallel lines. Those of you that remember Debbie Harry and Blondie will spot the fantastic album thing there. Great album, written for the call centre, hanging on the telephone. And, you know, we've got parallel lines, haven't we? People spend their Monday, as the chap did on the video, the white chap on the video, learning, and then he'll spend his 4 days on site learning. And there's no crossover, is there? Or if there is crossover, it's for him to make the connections in his own mind, or for the good lecturer to do so. But the structure is that they're parallel lines. We approach this trying to create something new, a higher level and degree apprenticeship, and they weren't called that at the start of this process, trying to link those parallel lines. And what we decided was that the missing link was the professional institutions. So people tend to do their degree, don't they? And then they move on to doing their PDP with the CIOB and all these other acronyms with everybody else. So they're sort of seen as 2 different things. But actually what people need to be at the end of it is a construction manager, a civil engineer or whatever it is, and the professional institutions tell us what that is. So let's structure the work experience around that. So that was our starting point. These traineeships, these cadetships and so on that we've all been doing for 30 years at least, are apprenticeships in everything but name. We haven't been able to call them that. We definitely can't call them that now with the new legislation that just came in, because we'd all get arrested. But they're apprenticeships in everything but name. So we created a consortium to try and move these trainee and cadet schemes into being proper, formal apprenticeships with the A word. And I actually think, I'm a strong believer that the A word has much, much more power and currency than it ever used to. You know, you can tell now, because even private schools are starting to say it might be okay to do an apprenticeship. So that means we know that we're heading in the right direction. So, it's been a long journey. About 13, 14, I can't even remember when we started now, it's been such a long journey. 2.5 to 3 years ago, we started looking at developing an apprenticeship. Before Trailblazers, before apprenticeship levies, before any funding thing, group of like-minded employers, large, medium and small, started looking at what an apprenticeship could look like at this higher level. And we called it a professional apprenticeship, because that three-way partnership between the institutions and the educational teams was really, really important. Challenges then, getting a common industry requirement. What is a site manager? What is a civil engineer? What is a building services engineer? You ask 5 different companies, you get 5 different answers. So the easiest place to go, the third party one if you like, is the professional institutions. Because sort of nobody can argue with that, can they? They're neutral and they're what we all aspire people to be. So if we want a definition of what a building services engineer is, we'll just take it from CIBSE and work backwards from there. Sorry Bridget, I didn't mention CIOB there. I was just trying to be more diverse. What we soon found was there's language differences between education and employers. So one of the big language differences, and Stephen will remember this one, is, will these people be apprentices or will they be students? Well, sort of who cares? But actually they'll be apprentices, but they'll be doing the qualifications, so they can sort of be both. But all sorts of different things around language have been really, really interesting. We started off with, and we've continued with trying to use as much existing infrastructure as possible. So there's been a lot of talk of innovation and different ways of thinking. I have to say, in retrospect now, maybe shamefully, but we decided to use as much existing stuff as possible for speed. How wrong we were there. Because you could develop an apprenticeship by rewriting everything, couldn't you, and having a fully integrated degree and work-based learning and all that sort of stuff. But when there's 50 universities already delivering part-time HNCs and degrees, and there's existing competence frameworks, why would you bother? Much better surely to repackage what's already there maybe, in a modular way, off-site construction. Working through creating apprenticeships, and we've created 10, has been a complete nightmare. Because you have to get government approval for them before you can do anything. And before anybody asks, not quite yet. We're 2 weeks beyond the 6-week turnaround time and we still don't know. The goalposts have changed constantly. So anybody that's been involved in apprenticeships, from education, from an employer, will know that the goalposts have gone from football to rugby to Irish football or whatever it's called, or Australian football. Nets, no nets, it's constantly changed. So that's been a real issue, because what you're trying to do is fit into, you know, a framework that somebody else is setting, and when that somebody else is the Department of Business Innovation and Skills, it's a challenge. Money is always really important, isn't it? So when we started this process, the funding model wasn't established at all. There was no mention of the L word. We were before Trailblazers, so didn't even know how these things would be funded. All we did know was that tuition fees had trebled, and companies can't take out student loans to pay for them, can they? It's a shame Stephen's gone, because I could remind him until this year, when tuition fees trebled, the grant for part-time students didn't treble. So funnily enough, part-time education in construction fell off a cliff. But he's gone, so I won't mention that. Now so as this has developed, actually funding's come to matter. Because now the apprenticeship levy is here, everybody wants to spend their apprenticeship levy. So actually there's a real imperative here now that we can sort of move from paying out lots of tuition fees to paying it from apprenticeship levy pots for those of us that will be paying the levy. 99% of construction won't be. In fact, here's a little aside. The construction industry itself, because it will have so few levy payers, will not raise enough money in levy to pay for its own existing apprenticeships before any expansion. So don't anybody talk about ring fencing ever, because we need Tesco's, who's going to be paying £22 million in apprenticeship levy every year. We need their money. The NHS is going to be paying £200 million a year in apprenticeship levy. Construction needs their money, otherwise we can't pay for our own apprenticeships. Just a little aside. Really important for universities as well, though, isn't it? And colleges, that the funding is properly sort of set up. So the apprenticeship levy will dictate certain payment terms, because you can't go overdrawn in it. So these, you know, the days of everybody, you know, tuition fees coming in one big lump in October, or the invoice coming in October, and then construction paying it next March, are gone, because there's not the ability to pay for it that way. Common agendas. It's been really, really interesting actually having this three-way partnership, because actually I think we have got a common agenda. The first common agenda is addressing this skills shortage you referred to, and I think actually calling it a skills mismatch is cleverer than a skills shortage actually. So I'll remember that one. But common agendas are really important. The universities need to, and colleges need to get their numbers back up, don't they? And it's really important for the professional institutions that they regenerate their membership. So actually we've got quite good on common agendas. So this is what we've come up with. Now this is the bit where I now feel really guilty, because earlier we talked about core skills in new bottles, and the structure we've got are really old bottles actually with lots of dust on them. So now I feel really bad, because I quite liked that. What we've got is, this is the structure that we are hoping to get government approval on shortly. We've got 5 sets of higher and degree apprenticeships that reflect the 5 main built environment bodies. The lower ones here, not the lower ones, but these I can't say lower because they're higher. These are level 4 apprenticeships, a higher apprenticeship. That technician and supervisory level, the assistant quantity surveyor, the assistant design coordinator, the assistant site manager. What they do in apprenticeships now is they don't start with the qualification, you start with the job role and work backwards, which can be quite a challenge for people. So these ones, the first 5, actually the starting point is you would come in and do a common level 3 year first, where everybody will be taught some building services engineering, some construction management, etc. It'd be quite handy if a construction manager understood building services, so that they maybe cover them up after they've been installed as opposed to before. If civil engineers understand a bit about quantity surveying and contract law. Just a thought. So that stuff earlier about the jack of all trades and master of one. I liked that one as well. I thought that was really clever. We haven't got enough of that in here actually. And one of the constraints is actually in choosing to go with the professional bodies, sorry Bridget, they themselves are discrete bodies, aren't they, with their own competence frameworks. So in an apprenticeship now, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but every apprenticeship now must have a final exam called an endpoint assessment. Okay, so we'll see skills tests coming back. Lots of people are quite nervous about that. I think that's brilliant. They still do it in Scotland. So, you know, the bricklaying one that's being developed at the moment by another employer consortium will have a skills test at the end. I think what actually happened is a minister a few years ago went around the skills show in Birmingham and thought, this looks really good. We'll have to have a test in an apprenticeship. We have chosen at these higher and degree ones that the endpoint assessment is Bridget's professional interview or professional review process, is the RISS's APC. So this apprenticeship, it's called a degree apprenticeship at this level, but the better term is the one we started with, but I'm not allowed to use anymore, which is professional apprenticeship. I'll focus on quantity surveyors just for a moment. They will complete the apprenticeship as a chartered quantity surveyor who happens to have a degree as well, or an incorporated civil engineer who happens to have a degree. If they don't pass their professional interview at the end, they won't pass the apprenticeship. They can resit it, so that's okay. So we've got these two stages, this sort of working at associate level, that technician level, followed by the chartered or incorporated level. So it's combining the education, the professional side and the employers. Just as a little overview, I've just put together a couple of little matrices that show the universities and colleges that have been interested. I've been absolutely blown away actually by the interest that universities and colleges have shown. I thought that was going to be the hardest thing to do, and actually the response has been overwhelming. Just double check. Yes, Oaklands are in there, thank goodness for that. So this sort of shows the spread of universities and colleges that are looking to deliver, and again at the level 6, so we've got quite a wide geographical coverage. Incidentally, these are just for England, because Scotland skills are devolved, so they still have their own apprenticeships, and incidentally if you're going to pay apprenticeship levy, they're not going to let you have it. Nicola's going to spend it for you. So wide range of universities and colleges there. Those are just the ones that have provided quotes, because we have to provide quotes to the government to work out how much it's going to cost. We've got loads more that are looking at this, which is fantastic. You'll notice, back to another reference earlier, that none of them are Russell Group universities. It's all the polys, and I use the P word in a complimentary way, as a poly graduate myself, and slightly biased. The Russell Group universities as yet are not interested in degree apprenticeships. Why not? Because they don't even do part-time degrees. So they've got two jumps to make. Part-time provision then becomes apprenticeships, whereas FE and the polys are used to delivering on a part-time basis. So that's where the interest has come, and that's fine. They work better with employers anyway. Right, the future. The future is we've got to gain approval. So we tried to get approval for these last year, and all these universities and colleges were ready to deliver last September. And the man from Del Monte said no, partly because they changed the goalpost slightly. We were hoping for approval at any moment. I keep getting questions from Biz and I keep answering them. I don't know if that's a good sign or a bad sign, but they haven't said no yet, so maybe this is just trying to extend the agony for me. As soon as we know, we're going to shout it out to the entire universe, except Scotland, of course, because they don't do Trailblazers there. And we're hoping to start delivery this September. We've got employers recruiting people to come onto this programme, and we've got universities and colleges ready to educate and help train these people. We just need Biz to say yes. Almost as soon as we've got that approval, new apprenticeships, not sure if you're aware of this, have a lifespan of 3 years. They have approval for 3 years. So we're going to have to start redesigning almost straight away. But that's okay, because I think then we can start to move into that innovation phase. So we've used existing infrastructure and existing sort of modules, if you like, but I think in the longer term we need to look into things like integrating the classroom and work. So day release, block release, people are comfortable with them, fine, and people do need that formal teaching input. But actually we need to be looking at people reflecting on their workplace experience. Some innovation in delivery, maybe use of things like simulation, for example, would be quite good. For me, a couple of big ones here. I like take overlap out with other standards. So the civil engineering one, for example, is a really good example. It's for contractors, civil engineers, site engineers, chemical toilet, side of the motorway. Atkins, Arup, WSP have just started to develop a design civil engineering degree apprenticeship. Nice toilets inside, not raining on them. Actually, because they're both linked to the ICE, in the longer term, they should probably be a joint apprenticeship with the core and options. But because of the way that they're developed at with different employers, then that hasn't happened at the moment. Possibly even having common things between the 5 professional bodies. Because actually, and Bridget sort of agrees with you on this because we've discussed this before, when you look at their individual competence frameworks, they're 80% the same. They might call contractual awareness something slightly different, but whether you're an engineer, building services engineer, etc., everyone needs contractual awareness. Everyone needs to know how to use BIM, everyone needs to know how to manage people, etc. And challenge for universities, of course, we still work on an academic year timetable, don't we? September to June. It's just a reality, and that's, again, part of using existing infrastructure. University of Buckingham, private university, been going for years, has always delivered 2-year full-time degrees because they have a 48-week year, not a 32-week one. Projects don't start in September and finish in June, do they? This isn't a dig at education, by the way. This is just the way the country works, isn't it? But I think that might be one of the areas for innovation. And then finally, how are we going to measure success? Well, the numbers. We think we'll start small, and we think, as Bridget has alluded to, this will snowball. And there'll be lots and lots of people wanting to do this. Results will be really important. These people will be getting degrees. Will they be getting 2 2s, 2 1s or firsts? And these people will be going for MCIOB. So what will the success rates be? High, hopefully. The very last one, diversity. One of the reasons why we chose to do a common level 3, common first year is, we thought if we set A levels as the incoming standard, and particularly STEM A levels, we won't get any girls applying. Because it's just an unfortunate fact that girls don't do A-level maths and physics. Some do, but hardly any do they? About a tenth of the number of chaps that do. I was at UCL last week, and they have 40% females in their civil engineering degree. 40%, still 10% too low, but 25% better than anyone else. Why? Because they no longer ask for A-level maths or physics for a civil engineering degree. So if you ask for A levels as your starting point, you're going to take away a huge number of people. It's not just about a diversity thing, actually. It's also about having a really broad funnel. What we found with our apprenticeship programs is lots of people don't even know what they want to do at 16, 18 or even 21. We actually get lots of early 20s people, obviously the same, applying to us. They've finished their school, worked in Next for a few years or in a bar or a restaurant, got a bit fed up, thought they want a future and are looking for a career path, aren't they? And by then, they're not really bothered about what GCSEs or A-levels they've done because they don't want to redo them. So the broader your funnel, we think, the more diverse in every sense of an entry point we think we'll have.